Good afternoon for me and good morning for you, perhaps midday. Nice to see some young ladies here. I have identified a few from Thailand, India, Cambodia. So it's a good representation of ages as I see, and I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you for a very lavish and indulgent introduction. The truth is, I have worked for 42 years now and I'm close to retirement. And I do like sharing experiences because I fundamentally believe that you really can't teach anything to anybody in business. It's something about your own insights and your practice. And by virtue of being in corporate for a very long time, and the last 26 years I've lived in Singapore, I have made countless trips to different parts of the world, maybe 50 odd countries. And the real learning is not in the textbooks, but in meeting people, in transacting business, trying to do business, and you learn more out of your failures. You learn something out of your success and out of all the challenges that you go through. And particularly, I'm told all of you are entrepreneurs, and my salute to you. The journey of entrepreneurship is actually a call to your own self-confidence, to your own abilities. And the very fact that you stand in as on your own feet is completely something so praiseworthy that it requires tremendous inner courage to say that I will do my bit. And the best learners, actually, I've always found, is the SMEs and the entrepreneurs, because they are doing it for themselves and they're not doing it for somebody else. And that is a universal truth. So I'm told I should speak for about 35-40 minutes, which I can go on as storytelling kind. But what I thought is I'll take the help of some slides I have used at times to teach practitioners to share experiences. It's a slightly little over 30 slides, but I wouldn't spend more than a minute each, just to lend you a little story. And if you don't finish it, I'm fine with it. And I'd concentrate more on questions. Now, I see that you are a fairly mixed group of friends from both the greater Mekong region and India. So I'm very happy to see some friends of ASEAN from Thailand and Cambodia, and as I say, maybe Vietnam too. Well, I'm an ASEAN citizen. I was born as an Indian, but I'm more international today. And I am a Singapore citizen. And as you said, I worked for the government here, which was part of the journey of internationalizing local companies as well. So with that, if I can have a screen share facility, then I will try and put up something for, for 1 minute. Huh? Are you able to see my screen share, please? Are you able to see the screen?
Yes, sir.
All right. Let me get started. You see, there are a couple of boxes, where we go right, where we go wrong in an international sense of the term. And my whole purpose on this is, you see the picture, there is a lady who's extending a hand and a Japanese who's actually bending himself. Are they communicating or not? Actually, it is cross-cultural to start. So the cross-cultural marketing challenges and the choices you make actually determine a lot about how you can transact business outside. I will just go through what you call the greater Mekong region is very loosely stated. I would request you to please be more careful. The Mekong region is basically CLMV countries, which is Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, Myanmar. So these are the 4 countries, Vietnam. So C is Cambodia, Vietnam, Myanmar, and Laos. These are the 4 which we call the Indochina Mekong. But when you say Greater Mekong, then obviously the large country like Thailand comes in, a part of China comes in, which is Yunnan and Guangxi. But this was all historically a part of what is called the Greater Mekong River Delta. If you see the blue line, it is the Greater Mekong River, or the river that flows through all of this. And a historian has beautifully said it when he writes about the book of Burma and others. He said there was more blood that has flown through this river then water. It's a very significant point because many of these countries through which this particular river, partly dry now, have gone through terrible times, very difficult history, if you know of Cambodia and Kampuchean times and the Pol Pot and all of that. Or you look at what's happening in Myanmar now or what's happened in the last 30 years. And relatively, of course, Laos is a little landlocked country in between. And everybody knows the history of Vietnam, the North Vietnam, the South Vietnam, the American War, and all of that. And Thailand has been always a country of peace and smiles. It has its own challenges today. And it's not an easy place today for its own people. But this is a region which has seen a lot of life, has seen a lot of action. Now, we're going to look at, firstly, define what is culture. You know, when two people talk from two different cultures, even in India, majority of you are Indians. If a South Indian meets North Indian, it becomes difficult for them to communicate, though they speak in Hindi or English, because what they say, what they mean, how they transact is not that easy. And particularly in this part of the world that we are looking at, each country has an evolved language. The Khmer language, the Thai language, the Vietnamese, Laotian, each of these languages are very different from one another. And there isn't a common language that binds all of them. Now, what is culture? In very simple terms, culture is basically a function of your history, the way the geography has really developed, your religion, your society, societal issues and beliefs, and the race. And typically, if you see all these faces of different people, in doing business or marketing with multicultural people, exactly the opposite things happen sometimes. The intended message becomes the unintended communication and causes a whole deal of confusion. You know, when the surf ad went to Middle East first, they put dirty clothes, put into water, wash it, and then they become absolutely white. But then in the Middle East, they read it the other way around. They thought if you take white clothes and put it in it, they become dirty and come out because they read it from left to right. So communication in international cross-cultural situations can be very different from what you think it is. And there is this master statement from Peter Drucker: culture actually eats strategy for breakfast. So you may be very good with your strategy, but the truth of the matter is, it is indeed the culture with which you run, and your understanding of cross-cultural nuances defines how effective you will be. Most people don't realize that culture is a very, very difficult thing to understand. It's a black box. Now, let me ask my friends from Thailand or from Cambodia or Vietnam who checked in. It's very difficult for them to understand how an Indian behaves. And let me share about our own Indian ways of doing things. It may be easy for an Indian to an Indian, but when somebody else deals with you, they have some pretty interesting questions. Now, let me also share, there are 400,000 management consultants around the world who tell you how you can do business. But there are not more than 15 or 20 cross-cultural specialists around the world who have taken up this very fine area, which is extremely important, but not very well focused upon. Let me take a little bit. What happens is culture comes out of your beliefs, your religion, your history, your society. I can share one of my first experiences. I mean, I've been to this whole Indochina region for no less than 40 or 50 times in my life, or even more. My first visit to Thailand, I'll remember in Bangkok, I was seeing a distributor, and I went with my shoes inside. You don't take your shoes and go into a conference room or a meeting room or an office in Thailand because it's considered discourteous. You leave your shoes outside like we do sometimes in India because it's not the right thing to do. And wherever the king's photo, the Rama, is hung on the wall, you're not supposed to sit and put your foot up against the picture, even unintentionally, because it's seen to be very discourteous. You go to China and give somebody a watch as a gift. It's terrible, you know. For us, even in weddings in India, people give watches. You will wonder why you're not supposed to give a gift of a watch in China, because if you give a Chinese gentleman in the Chinese culture, if you give a watch, it means your time is up. You're wishing him that death is coming close. It's considered extremely inauspicious. So these are the nuances which we miss out very often. Let me take you through the other part, okay, this is a little funny, but very often some of our non-verbal communications can also cause a problem. You see, when we are in India, we often use our finger to make a point. And we say, this is right, I'm telling you. And in a Confucian culture, showing a finger is very discourteous. And people in a meeting will tell you that the Indian fellow came and showed his finger to me. And then their mind stops functioning. They may consider that it was so bad that you showed your finger. Sometimes in certain cultures, starting a sentence with the word no is considered extremely discourteous in Asia. You say yes, and then you disagree. But we have in an Indian culture sometimes to start a sentence by saying, no, no, but yes, I agree with you. So these things cause quite a number of communicational challenges. And now coming to the last point here on COM, you know, somebody asked the world specialist as to what is basically the world's language of business. Unfortunately, it is English. And it's not Queen's English, nor American English, nor Indian English. But the world's common language is called bad English. And bad English can be very easily misunderstood by the sender nor the receiver, depending on how he wants to take the meaning. Okay. I'm just giving you a few things, you know. These are the kind of boards sometimes I've seen in Southeast Asia, and I find like laughing. You know, China, slip and fall down carefully. I mean, it's a, you know, don't miss. So you have these kind of issues which are language issues and non-verbal. I'll just quickly run through. Today, looking at the global village and trying to do marketing, there are things which are relating to consumers, some relating to relationships, globalization, and the kind of intimacy you can strike with your consumer or customer. Let me take you through some very simple principles. And these are generic principles that work everywhere. I think you are very experienced people sitting there. Typically, we try to focus on a certain strategy and we think there is a consumer there and it's a straightforward move from point A to B to reach the consumer. Here I make and I'll go to the consumer in another country. But the reality of life is a little different. While there are a lot of opportunities and there is a market out there, it's not a straight reach out as we think. It's very nebulous to find out. The number 2 point I want to say is there is a change in the world today, which I call the new paradigm of global mindsets, which are not just about markets, but it's about technology. It's about the kind of people. And there's a list of endless developments. And most importantly, the people who are doing the international business must have the competency of being a global manager to be sensitive to cross-cultural nuances and understanding. And I would just move on a little bit with a certain speed so that we can get to more core discussions. Typically, theoretically, we say we need capital, we need some capability and connections to get global business. But what you also need a lot of courage, lots of commitment, and a lot of cultural willingness with patience to be able to do business with people who are different from you. Their mind is different, their culture is different, their way of behavior is different, their communication is different, and therefore there's a lot of learning to be done and time to be invested. And number 4, never be very scared to be the forerunner. And, you know, we often look for people who are similar. We don't look for people who are dissimilar to us. I can tell you, if you're a suited, booted guy, you're unlikely to go out and have a drink with a guy who's looking like that. You see, you'll think he's a punk. But your ability to actually accept someone who's different, who looks stranger, and you're able to strike a conversation, strike a relationship, actually makes you a little more effective and capable in dealing with cross-cultural challenges. One important message I have for it is very often we get very carried away by presentations, a certain sexiness about how things are presented or talked about. I think rather than look at all the externalities of it, I think is important to guard against being carried away by just the jazz of something, whether it's a market, whether it's a partner, whether it's a potential relationship. I think you need to actually peel peel the orange to get to the juice, actually, rather than be, taken away by the jazz and the razzmatazz. Number 6, I think I want to tell my friends from this region, sutra in Indian language means a principle. So I use the word sutra at some stage to talk about it in a different context. So I'm using the same slides here. Here is a very interesting looking fellow. So, figuratively, a person from a different culture to you looks like that to you, psychologically. You don't know what your customer's peculiarities are, what his joy is, what his context is. And I think you need a lot of patience to understand your global customer versus your neighborhood customer who you know very well. When you go into a new market, please look out. In every new market, you have tough guys. You have got bullies. I call them the big bullies of the market. Nobody is out there to welcome you and say, hey, come along, we will do something. You have to be very careful about competition. The bullies can come along with you. They could be just your own neighborhoods. You go and do a deal, strike a contract at an X price. A big fellow comes, the next flight, and then he outdoes you and takes away your business. So global bullies in business, you unfortunately find quite a number of them, and you need to be on the lookout always when you're going to be jumping into this business. This is perhaps the most important guidance, I will say. You can't do a business in a new country without having a partner. And if you choose your partner with care, a partner you can trust, a partner with whom you can communicate, understand, and build the relationship, it can be of mutual trust and a huge amount of benefit that you can draw out of it, because the partner bridges the gap and becomes really truly your co-conspirator, co-partner, and somebody who really shows the light on the way for you to get to where you want to do. But God forbid, you end up with the wrong partner. There are no principles to decide which is right or wrong. You need to take your time before you get into partnerships. If you don't get the right partner, 9 out of 10 cases of global marketing disasters are because you end up with the wrong partner. And jurisdictionally, it's very difficult to seek for an SME, legal recourses, sue them and collect monies and so on and so forth. Very important, when you go into the new market, there is very little preparation. People take their bag, take a flight, and then just say, land up and say, I want to do a business. It's good to be a delightful adventurer who will eventually win. But you need to also prepare, and you need to position yourself with your homework before you enter a market, to study the market, study the companies, study their backgrounds. And today it's much easier with internet, and also by trade officers of various countries who do help for connecting people. The bodies such as your Bombay Chamber, there are a lot of trade bodies on all sides who are ready to help SMEs. These are good things to do, but please do have preparation and then have the delight of being able to jump in it. I'm coming to a more closing up. On the cultural side, adaptation and developing an affinity. You must become such that rather than being critical, you should be able to respect, you must be sensitive, you must empathize, and you must adapt, because millions of deals get ruined because of cultural insensitivity and naivety. We don't know, say something in the wrong place, do something wrongly, and it breaks the trust of the other person, and the other person doesn't actually even communicate. So rather than being critical about something which is different, let's be more respectful, more sensitive, understand why they think about it, accept the difference. And if you're able to empathize with your cross-cultural business partner and you adapt to them, I think a lot of good business can happen, a lot of good development can happen. Number 11, don't wish your customers or your partners or associates to look something. They are not always what they look like. They're still, no matter what it is, you love them because they are partners, they are your customers, and you accept all their glitches, and still you do what you need to do. The pictures are a little more powerful in sending the message. Of course, number 12 is doing the homework. I'm sure you all know about it. I don't have to teach this. I just share. We need to be clear about what is opportunity. If you are hazy about what the opportunity and get into a market, I think the cost of cost of making mistakes is high. You need to define a point of view where, how, that's basically the strategy. Sharpen your value propositions, make it look into the eyes into a customer. What is it in it for him and why should he engage with you? And if you are an organization, engage the entire organization. Develop very focused and creative campaigns or communications, and always look for the low-hanging fruit to build on success, and provide the right sales, after sales support, because that's very important. And constantly measure yourself as to how you're doing against your own targets. This is another naughty one, but whenever you're doing business in some of these countries, you don't know what the weak point is or the danger point is. So you have to take a holistic view and never get carried away by enthusiasm alone. You need to take a very holistic view of your strategy and determine where there could be some mishaps or mistakes. And always when you're expecting sales to happen until you've seen it, the sales pipeline always looks bulged up in the middle, whether it's small company or large. We don't know what happens. It looks like it's a big business, but eventually what comes out is very small. So I think one has to be a bit realistic about measuring what is the potential. Before you put up a new plant and extra machine thinking that this will sell, you may end up in fair number of problems by being a little naive on it. And well, there's always a great chance factor when you go overseas, because the number of unknowns are much more than knowns. But every successful international business leader has said that if you had not taken that chance, you wouldn't have come where you are. If you go to around the world, which I've been to all of these countries, I see so many cross-cultural businessmen who have gone, make investments in new countries, have grown it. I can tell you a number of Indians in Southeast Asia, including all of these countries, have done exceedingly well. And they have taken that chance and they made it a success, whether it's Thailand, whether it's Cambodia, Vietnam. Good number of Indian businessmen, SMEs have done a great deal of investments there and have done across various areas. Still, I think one needs to dare to dream about going overseas and making a presence in these countries. And it's indeed a very fascinating experience. And I can always tell you, discovering a new country and doing business, there is no excitement which really compares with it in the whole career of any businessman, because everything is new. And this is your mental makeup. You have to expect the unexpected and be prepared for some setbacks, a little bit of disappointments, and you must have a certain base to defend. If there is something that goes wrong, you manage your risks in a more sensible manner. Now, I'll come to two slides which actually summarize a little bit about our own experience, how India presents itself to friends who come from overseas. They find an Indian managers and Indians somewhat incredible. So this is something that one has to mind, incredible in both ways, both in terms of its ability to delight and India's ability to surprise. So there is always this thing that we expect that the great Indian dream is the world should adapt to us, then perhaps we adapting to the world at times. Therefore, this is just a naughty slide that shows, Bill Clinton there sitting and buying vegetables. Now, let me give you a few simple experiential insights where brand India, that doesn't matter whether you're a large company, small company, individual company, some advice or some insight I'll share which may be helpful to you. This is based on a lot of stuff. Number one, when we go out and talk to a potential partner, there is a chance of talking in range numbers. How much is your turnover? Oh, 2,000 to 3,000 crores. Now that doesn't give credibility. You see, it gives incredibility. If you're a businessman, you should know your business, your turnover is 2,640 crores. They're not specific. We'll say 2,000 to 3,000 crores. How many employees do you have? You will say 100 to 200. I mean, it's not that you've not counted between 100 to 200. It's better to say exactly what it is. Then the usage of words which seem like largest, biggest, best, top, these are claims sometimes may not be very beneficial, because the moment you put such superlative adjectives in self-description, you may raise more doubts than more credibility. Same is the point about best, biggest, largest, etc. These are typically something which is not very specific. I'm not sure if you're in technology or you're in IT and these businesses. Some of the special ways in which Indian businesses will express themselves could also be considered somewhat difficult for others to understand. Is the business, if you say that, is the shipment ready? You might say almost there, or more or less, it's complete. So this actually doesn't mean much, and it can create a different feeling. Let's say in a European mind, it'll create a lot of disturbance. How are you? It's so, or double shows, and always there is a confidence that you have never done something, but somewhere a customer asks, you show a sense of confidence. Though we have not done it, we can do it. So some of these, you need to also be a bit more careful. And sometimes when you also express yourself, the British have left a certain English. I said the global English standard is called the bad English. So there's nothing wrong in being not the British, but we need to be careful how we use certain prepositions in our communication so that people understand. Sometimes we switch a lot into Hindi words, which others don't understand. We assume that, the Bollywood goes all around the world. And it sometimes can be a little bit of a problem. Out of politeness, people may not ask, they may not understand. And, we also sometimes like to argue as our nature of an argumentative Indian. And we tend to agree and disagree in the same line, which can be very confusing too. And last but not the least, I think our ability to speak English is much faster than the British themselves who created the language. And we tend to speak so fast that for most people, they're polite and they just listen to you. It's like one super bullet train going past them and they don't get a meaning. And in their cultures, they don't want to ask you whether they've understood or not. So they just smile at you and you think you conveyed what you want to convey. So I think important to be a bit more slow down and be sure that your partner, your consumer, customer has understood what you're trying to say, etc. So let me give you the learning curve. First, you have to recognize that you got to learn about cross-cultural stuff. Two, you got to respect. And then you got to reconcile. He's different from me, he's not the same, but I still respect him. Now that I've realized I need to make a change in the manner in which I react. So that's the kind of circle you go through. And this is a picture where I took it from a naughty one, but it's actually a good way of wishing you, and it's not that they're making a bad symbol. So sometimes nonverbal communications make very, very confusing messages. And last but not the least, I would suggest innocence here shows a lot to me, the ability to learn and always get awed by the different cultures that are there in the world at large. And I would say one has to always be curious and willing to learn, experience, be ready to try things. And well, that's all I can say. And I may end up by saying that each of these countries have very different cultures from one another. Now, Vietnam has evolved quite significantly. I would like to stop the screen share now and I'll speak to you. For instance, Vietnam has made phenomenal progress and it's still progressing at a very different level than most of the countries in the region. Be it electronics, be it technology, be it software. I think the country has very hardworking people, very capable people, and pretty evolved. And the US investments and European investments have gone. The Chinese and Koreans and Japanese have been there. It's a vibrant economy, I must say. And it's a country that you can't ignore should you be looking at the region. Cambodia, and mind you, I mean, Vietnam culturally is very different and distinct. They have the strong Vietnamese feel and the Vietnamese national pride. They're also very Americanized because the Americans were there for a long time. They're quite open to the West. The Cambodian Khmer culture is a mix of the past culture of the pre-colonial Kalinga kings, which was from where the Kling word came, and Cambodia was before Cambodia. And they have a part of that old tradition, which actually came out of, those who like history, if you go to the biggest temple in the world, and you read and experience that, you have a connection with the Kalinga region of India. So there is a certain commonality between Indians and, I would say, the Cambodians. They like Indians, and the Cambodian whole culture has had a little bit of French influence. The commercial world, because the French had ruled that country as well, and therefore I think it's a mix of it. And if you go to Laos, there's a strong cultural feeling of the French there. It's a small country. It's a very clean and very nice country, but the opportunities are somewhat limited. But it's a beautiful, Vientiane is a great place. I love to go there. There's a lot of history. There's a beautiful place to go. Thailand is a huge country, actually. And Thai culture is, again, highly evolved. And it has a strong Buddhist seat in it. So does Cambodia, also has a lot of Buddhism in there. You have a king there. And people are very kind, very soft-spoken, non-violent, to be honest with you, and great to do business with. The only challenge you'll find in all of these countries is language is a challenge. English is not so common, so you need somebody to actually translate things for you. Some of them have picked up English now. It's not so bad as it used to be 30 years ago or 40 years ago. Now people are loving to talk in English, make friends with outsiders, lots of foreign investment and so on. But it always helps you to read, as I said, read about the history of a country, read about the people, read about their food habits. And last but not the least, I just want to stress, cross-cultural is just not communication and sitting together. But in anywhere in the business we do, we always have to break some bread. And it will be always good for you to open up your mind to different styles of food and cuisines, and sitting down and talking about it and having food with them. Because in the Asian culture, they all like to sit down and have a meal with you. I'm talking about the world which will again come back, which will be post-COVID. Some stage will be post-COVID, when we all can travel and sit down and have a meal together, because business doesn't happen on a remote basis. You get your coffee on your Zoom and I get my coffee, it's okay. It's only going to last for a while, I think. And being able to offer a cultural experience for each other is, I think, what makes it a greater bond. And as Indians, majority of you are here, are very good hosts, and we are good cultural inductees to others, because we take pride in telling others as to how old our culture is, how deep is our evolved, cuisines and places to see and so on. And I'm sure many of my friends from the greater Mekong region have the same sense and the same ability to actually induct you and show you around and indulge you if you show the interest. I do see the hesitancy sometimes from my friends from India, who I think now we've got a reputation that anyone who looks remotely an Indian is a vegetarian, and they're going to find some green vegetables for you to eat, which is not the truth. So I would very much welcome you to the adventure of discovery of different cultures, and it will be a very enriching life. I suppose I've done my time.